Today, Putin lowers the threshold for using Russia's nuclear weapons. The US recognizes Venezuela's opposition as president-elect, and Germany's ruling SPD considers ousting Olaf Scholz. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Wednesday the 20th of November, 2024. Our main story today, Russian President Vladimir Putin has approved changes to Russia's nuclear doctrine, setting out new conditions and lowering the threshold under which the country would consider using its nuclear arsenal. The previous doctrine, part of a 2020 decree, said that Russia may use nuclear weapons in case of a nuclear attack by an enemy or a conventional attack that threatened the existence of the state. The changes now say that an attack from a non-nuclear state, if backed by a nuclear power, will be treated as a joint attack on Russia. Furthermore, such an attack could meet the criteria for a nuclear response, as could an attack on Belarus or any critical threat to Russia's sovereignty. The change follows Washington's decision on Monday to allow Ukraine to fire long-range US-made Army tactical missiles into Russian territory. Together, Russia and the US control 88% of the world's nuclear warheads. Ukraine fired its first US missiles into Russian territory on Tuesday, in the Bryansk region. The Russian Defense Ministry said it intercepted 5 missiles and damaged 1 out of the 6 that were fired. Russia had been warning the West for months that if Washington allowed Ukraine to fire US, British and French missiles deep into Russia, Moscow would consider those NATO members to be directly involved in the war in Ukraine, and that lifting such restrictions would be considered an act of war. The former Russian president and the deputy chair of Russia's Security Council wrote in a post on X that Russia's new nuclear doctrine means NATO missiles fired inside Russia could be deemed an attack by the bloc on Russia, and Russia could retaliate with weapons of mass destruction against Kyiv and key NATO facilities. That means World War III. However, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said, "We strongly are in favour of doing everything to not allow nuclear war to happen." Putin has threatened to use nuclear weapons before, and Ukraine has criticised it as nuclear sabre-rattling to deter its allies from providing further support. At the same time, the Russian state news agency RIA Novosti reported that on Tuesday the state began mass production of mobile nuclear shelters, which can be used to protect people from nuclear explosions or radioactive contamination. The war is entering what some Russian and Western officials say could be its final and most dangerous phase, as Moscow's forces advance at their fastest pace since the early weeks of the conflict, and the West ponders how the war will end. There's more on the way, but remember to subscribe and ring the bell for more daily briefing tomorrow. Plus, if you want to support the channel like Asu Sarwar SRS, then consider joining the TLDR Daily membership program for just $1.99. The United States has recognized Venezuela's opposition candidate as president-elect of the South American country, demanding that President Nicolas Maduro respect the will of the voters. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in a post on X that, quote, "The Venezuelan people spoke resoundingly on July the 28th and made Edmundo Gonzalez the president-elect." Previously, the Biden administration had said that Gonzalez had won more votes than President Maduro at the July election, but had, until now, refrained from acknowledging him as the president-elect. Venezuela's National Electoral Council had declared Maduro the election winner hours after polls closed, but failed to provide detailed vote counts, with observers saying that the election was not credible or democratic. The opposition coalition, however, collected tally sheets from some 80% of voting machines and posted them online, suggesting that Gonzalez had won the election with twice as many votes as Maduro. Gonzalez had been in Spain since September, after Venezuelan authorities issued a warrant for his arrest in connection to the release of the tallies. While the US's move is designed to increase pressure on Maduro, it does not mean that the US will call Gonzalez the rightful president after Inauguration Day on January the 10th, when Maduro expects to be sworn in. During the first Trump administration, the US recognized another opposition figure, Juan Guaido, as the legitimate president, in a failed attempt to oust Maduro. Trump's policy going forward, after he's inaugurated on January the 20th, will be closely watched. With fewer than 100 days until Germany is set to go to the polls for an early federal election, Chancellor Olaf Scholz is under mounting pressure to step aside as his Social Democratic Party's candidate for Chancellor. Some in the SPD would like to see Scholz, one of the least popular politicians in the country, be replaced by Defence Minister Boris Pistorius, consistently the most popular politician in Germany. Pistorius, however, has publicly declared his loyalty to Scholz, saying, "The question doesn't even arise for me. We have a candidate for Chancellor. He is the current Chancellor. It all boils down to that. I'm really very happy with my job. I like being Defence Minister." However, he has left the door open to possibly running for the top job, saying, "In politics, you should never rule anything out, no matter what it's about. The only thing I can definitely rule out is becoming Pope." Those in the SPD who want to see Scholz replaced by Pistorius argue that Pistorius is the only one who can turn the centre-left party's fortunes around ahead of the upcoming election. One recent poll put the SPD in third place, with just 15%, behind the far-right AfD on 18%, and way behind the first-place Conservative CDU on 33%. Politico writes that senior SPD politicians reportedly met on Tuesday night, without Scholz or Pistorius, to discuss how to avoid weeks of internal debate they fear would only further hurt the party's performance in the upcoming election. A crisis in the Russian-backed breakaway Georgian region of Abkhazia has seen the territory's president resign days after protesters stormed government buildings and forced him to scrap an unpopular deal with Russia. Protests erupted last week in opposition to an investment agreement with Russia that oppositions feared would enable wealthy Russians to buy up land and property in the Black Sea region, pricing out locals. Protesters stormed and occupied the territory's parliament and presidential administration offices. And while Abkhazia leader Aslan Bjanya initially vowed to stay in post, the bill has been withdrawn and he's since resigned, quote, in order to maintain stability and constitutional order, and as part of a deal that will see protesters vacate government premises. Bjanya's deputy will replace him until new elections are held, with Bjanya saying he will run again. Abkhazia, as well as South Ossetia, was recognized by Russia as an independent state after the 2008 Russo-Georgian War. Georgia considers the two breakaway states as occupied by Russia. According to the International Crisis Group, the protests do not mean that Abkhazia is turning against Moscow. To the contrary, the Abkhazia opposition stressed that Moscow's engagement in the region is not the problem, it's Bjanya. And finally, our uplifting news story comes from Newcastle, Australia, where a local dementia choir of around 40 members has become a vital source of friendship and social connection for individuals living with dementia. Founded last August by two dedicated professors, Dr. Helen English and Dr. Michelle Kelly, the choir aims to enrich the lives of participants and their family caregivers. Dr. Kelly, an associate professor of clinical psychology, specialises in improving the well-being of older adults, regardless of their cognitive health. She envisioned the choir as a meaningful opportunity for those affected by dementia to engage in a fulfilling experience that rises above the challenges of the condition. But more importantly, music serves as a powerful trigger for both memories and in eliciting certain emotions. Currently, it's estimated that 421,000 Australians are living with dementia, a figure expected to exceed 812,500 within the next 30 years, according to Dementia Australia. Dr. English and Kelly are hoping to expand the service in the future. Now, obviously, all of that is pretty complicated, but hopefully our analysis has made it a little clearer. Making videos like this requires a lot of effort and research to uncover what's really going on, before then summarising it into something that makes sense to everyone. But that's an expensive process. Running TLDR this year has cost just under £800,000, which, when your main product is free YouTube videos, is quite a lot of money. If you want to support our journalism in 2025, then one way to do so is picking up a copy of our magazine Too Long. That's because buying Too Long doesn't just get you a high-quality magazine, it also allows you to invest in independent journalism and join us in shaping the future of news. Now, this most recent issue focuses on the 29 biggest elections of the year, making sure you understand what really happened in this mega election year and commemorating one of the biggest years in news. We don't just discuss elections, though. We also run through China's trade issues, Biden's successes and failures, and the UK's new opposition leader, and the state of the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. Plus, the fact it's a magazine also means we're not constrained by the time limits or algorithms imposed by YouTube. Unlike fleeting news cycles and algorithmic feeds, Too Long offers thought-provoking analysis and comprehensive coverage that's truly worth holding. If you're convinced, you have 3 more decisions to make. First, do you want a physical or digital copy? The physical is a high-quality 60-page perfect-bound magazine shipped right to your door. The digital is slightly cheaper, especially if shipping is a concern. Your second choice is the standard or premium edition. The standard is just a copy of the magazine, while premium also gets you access to our monthly behind-the-scenes podcast, The Bullpen, where we break down all of the production of Too Long and TLDR more generally, and you'll get your name printed in the thank you section of the magazine. Finally, do you want to subscribe? If you do, you'll get a copy of Too Long every 4 months, meaning you'll never miss an issue. Plus, you'll also get 25% off every copy as long as you stay subscribed. If you can, subscribing also gives us a reliable income stream, which is super useful for us. Regardless of which option you choose, you can buy a copy right now at toolong.news or click the link in the description. Thanks for your support, and thanks for backing Too Long.